we're going to talk about tips and strategies for effective note-taking. We're also going to talk about highlighting annotation. So for my first question, how many of you take notes during class? Show of hands. So tell me a little bit about how your instructors give notes during class.
I won't say give notes, but so far just kind of just pointing out what the key words that she says.
Okay.
That's how I know when to write down. Like she repeats something twice.
Okay.
That's when I know something to write down.
Yeah, kind of like
Okay.
Like PowerPoints or on the board or something.
Okay, so they're using PowerPoint and they're also using writing on paper. Are they standing up in front of you and talking and expecting you to take notes as well?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do first, we're going to do an exercise to kind of get you started to gauge how y'all are currently. I'm going to read through this first, and I want you to take notes as you normally would when an instructor is reading notes. And at the end of this, I'm going to ask you what you have written. So a case study is a research methodology that has commonly used in social sciences. A case study is a research strategy and an empirical inquiry that investigates a phenomenon within its real-life context. Case studies are based on an in-depth investigation of a single individual, group, or event to explore the causes of underlying principles. A case study is a descriptive and exploratory analysis of a person, group, or event. I'm going to start right there. So let's talk about some effective ways to take notes. So usually when so tell me what y'all do when the instructor is reading off just like I read off. Are y'all listening to the instructor, or are you paying attention to what's on the screen right now, what's on the screen?
Yeah. More like I'm just, well, my instructor, she just talks behind the screen. So anything she said at the beginning, I just write down, but if she would say something else, I probably won't catch up with it.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's probably I just write down as much as I can.
Okay.
I generally just write down most of the stuff I see, and whenever she says like you need to know this or something like that, that's when I pay attention.
Okay.
Yeah,
How about
same
you?
concept, like I'll be listening, but I'll write down what I'm reading on the board.
Okay. So it's kind of a mix of listening to the teacher and just writing down what's on the board. Okay? Because I know a lot of times students would tune the teacher out and they just focus on what's on the board and they'd be writing on the board. In fact, they may write everything on the board. That's not effective note taking. So one of the things that I'm going to show y'all today is to kind of get the main points without having to take a whole bunch of notes, getting to the point. This is also an effective way to highlight and annotate material as well. So let's start with the first sentence. So a case study is a research methodology that has commonly used in social sciences. So our method of note-taking is to get to the point. We don't need all of this information to know what a case study is. So we can say a case study is commonly used in social sciences. Like all of this research methodology, commonly used, like we don't need to know that information. Effective note-taking, let's just get to the point. So a case study, so a case study used in social sciences. Second one, a case study is a research strategy and an empirical inquiry that investigates a phenomenon within its real-life context. So we could say a case study investigates a phenomenon within its real-life context. Case studies are based on the in-depth investigation of a single individual, group, or event to explore the causes of underlying principles. Let this be your habit. So a lot of times when we're taking notes, to make bullets, easy to remember. We can break our notes down if we're putting the notes in our own words. Remember, our topic is case study. We don't even have to go back and say case study now. We can just say used in social sciences. So then we can give an example of the different academic departments that use case studies. So we don't have to say case study again because we know that's our topic. And if we use our bullets, we can just say it's based on in-depth investigation of a single individual, group, or event. And then case study investigates a phenomenon know that it's real life stuff. So those are just a few tips on how you can look at one complete topic and break it down into your notes. And one thing you always want to do is just put, like, when it comes to notes, for unfamiliar vocabulary, you want to always write down the vocabulary words, only if they're needed, only if it's, for example, descriptive. You may need to use descriptive examples in your work. So this would be one of your keywords to make what could be a complicated topic easy to understand. Also, you want to give examples, specific examples and specific details. So if you were giving an example of, this doesn't talk about the methods that are used in case studies, but a lot of case studies includes observations, interviews, and surveys. So one thing from your note taking, figure out what comes next. What's the next step? What else do I need to know about case studies? This will definitely help me understand an assignment, because usually you're given an assignment next. So usually you're being lectured on a concept, which in this case, our case study is our concept. So we know after we've taken notes about this, there needs to be an assignment. There's usually an essay that's followed up behind it. So if you have all of this information from your notes, it'll help you. So let's talk about some of your personal challenges for note taking. What are some of those challenges?
I'd say for me personally, for like one of the more uninteresting topics for me would just be paying attention.
Okay, we'll talk about those once we start a list. So, what else? What's another challenge for note taking?
Retain all the information that's being said. Like, if I don't know if I'm just trying to get any information, because you never know what's going to be on the quiz or test. So I'm just writing down everything that instructor is saying.
Okay.
And a lot of stuff might not even be on there, and I just learned all that. And yeah, it's just like wasting paper.
Okay.
Mine would be learning to write shorthand and write quicker, because I have terrible coming up with shorthands. I gotta think of a way to do better shorthand.
Okay.
That's one thing I've always struggled with.
So what are some issues that you all have seen from the instructor in terms of note taking and effective note taking?
Use highlighters.
Yeah, I was gonna say like color coded.
How else can you make note taking more interesting?
What I do is I color code my stuff with the highlighters. Like
Okay.
I use one color for the dates and the names, and then put like a little key at the bottom what each color is.
Okay. So,
What about pictures?
pictures, we can use pictures.
Visuals.
Can we make a lecture interesting when it's not interesting? How else can you interact with the lecture so that it's effective for you?
Ask questions.
Ask questions. One way that I think is effective, especially when you're taking notes, to go ahead and think of some examples, think of relevant examples. So if the instructor is giving notes about a particular concept, if you have an immediate example that you can think of, go ahead and get it out your head and put it on paper. Right outside your note, you can put a bullet, and you can give your example. So what are some other challenges that you all have with taking notes when your instructor, say your instructor is standing up in front of you like I am now and they're just talking? What's some issues that y'all currently have with getting down the notes?
Like not talking loud enough, or
Okay.
not able to.
doesn't articulate their words very well.
Okay.
And their words run together.
Or they veer off topic a lot.
Exactly.
And then, which makes it hard to really know what you need to take notes on.
So how do we begin to remedy this as students? Because I always believe that students, your education is your responsibility as well as the instructor's responsibility, like being proactive in your education. So if you can't see, or you can't, the instructor talk too fast, or they talk too loud or too soft, or they always veering off topic, what are some professional ways that you can get to address these issues as a student?
Sit closer to the front.
So you can sit closer to the front. Certainly, you can ask the teacher to repeat him or herself. You can always say that. It does not matter if you ask that teacher 10 times. Can you repeat yourself? You can also ask if the teacher uses PowerPoints, like say in the beginning of the semester they use PowerPoint, so you know that teacher uses technology. You can ask the teacher, do you have a PowerPoint presentation of your notes? And that's always an option. But if you're in a class where the teacher is talking too fast, or the teacher's not talking loud enough, or they veering off topic, you can politely say, what's the main point of, this particular topic that you're talking about? Don't tell them what you say, because I've seen it so many times where students don't do it in a professional way, and that kind of throws the teacher off from what they're saying. So let's talk about a little bit more about highlighting annotation and annotating information. So looking at our notes, we know now how to not write down everything. We know that we can now just get the main points. So a lot of times y'all are assigned like 7 or more things to read at a time, maybe 5 or more things to read at a time, right? Y'all ever had a day or a week where y'all are asked to read, say, 3 articles for one class? Y'all don't necessarily have all that time to read those articles, right? So we're going to talk about some ways to read like a writer. And once y'all start to implement these strategies, and you don't have to do them all, just start at one at a time and see how it works for you. So one thing you always want to do if you're given multiple things to read, you want to capture the main ideas. So, part of capturing those main ideas, you can look at your headings. Look at the introduction. Look at topic sentences. And before you do that, you want to make sure that you get the thesis statement. You want to know what's the author's main point or the main argument. If you don't know the thesis statement, then you're going fishing. Use your margins. Take notes outside the margins. Because if you do, then it's actually a great study tip as well. So if you're studying and there's a long passage that you're reading, pick out the main points. If you need to draw arrows and state what that point is, draw the arrow to the paragraph. Keep it near the paragraph so that you know. So by the time you get through reading the article, you will have bullets, you will have arrows, you will have some indication and markings that this is what this paper is about. So the other thing to do, remember, is put it in your own words. And this is a great tip, especially when you have multiple things to read. Even if you're just reading one thing, these tips are very useful and helpful. You want to also make sure that vocabulary, so in addition to thesis statements, you want to look at the vocabulary. You want to look at the examples. And I know a lot of our classes now, we're asking people to do a rhetorical analysis. How many of you have heard of a rhetorical analysis? Okay, and what does the rhetorical analysis consist of? What are we looking at?
What the author is writing.
So we're looking at the author's writing, but there are specific things that we're looking for. What are those things?
How they appeal to the readers, like emotions.
So they're appealing to emotions. What do we call emotions? The Greek word for it.
What is it, ethos?
That is credibility. I heard it in the background. Pathos. Ethos is what?
Credibility.
Credibility. And then we have what else?
Logos.
We have logos. And then there's another one, there's a fourth dimension that many people don't talk about. This one is kairos. And kairos is significance or timeliness. So if we wrote a paper about politics, what would be a good example of kairos when we think about politics? If we look at the head honcho in the White House, he would be a significant figure. So if the author gave you examples about politics, that would be kairos. So a lot of times, your papers are asking you to talk about these things. They're asking you to look for examples. So when you're taking notes, the first thing, well, that's like the fourth thing now, because we know now we need a thesis statement. We need vocabulary if it applies. We need our main examples, because we know what our main ideas are, so now we can pick out those examples, and if we're doing a rhetorical analysis, we can now identify these things. And then our next step, we could talk about whether or not the author was effective in meeting these four things. So, take a quick pause to ask y'all, when y'all are reading, how are y'all taking notes with what you're reading? Say you got an assignment in front of you. What are y'all doing? How are y'all tackling that reading assignment? Are y'all reading every word? Okay.
Yes.
So we know today we don't have time to do that. What else are we doing currently? You got a reading assignment in front of you.
I just kind of skim through it to see if there's any vocabulary that I don't already know. Just start with it.
Skim. Skimming is your friend. This is your college friend. This will actually be your, when you get out of college and you enter the workforce, friend. Skim. We have to skim. There's too many other things going on outside of a reading.
So when you're skimming, what are you looking for?
So you're looking for these same things. You want to look for the thesis statement, you want to know what the author's argument is, and you want to know what the author's main points are. You're also looking at vocabulary. You know, you're looking at your directions. That's first and foremost. Especially when you're given an assignment. You want to make sure that you're clear about your directions. And when you're clear about your directions, this will also help you skim. It will also help you know what you're looking for. So in a rhetorical analysis paper, your directions could be to talk about whether or not the author was effective in his or her use of rhetorical appeals. Y'all currently doing, y'all have a reading assignment outside of reading every word. Who's not reading at all and just waiting for the teacher to read it?
You figured I'd be guilty.
Okay. And this happens. I have students who don't read at all. They wait for the teacher to read it. Sometimes the teacher goes over it, sometimes the teacher doesn't. And then what happens when they don't read it, they need that paper for supporting details, and they don't know it because they haven't read it. Or they wait until the last minute to try to gather concepts from the page, only after the assignment is due. Like, they'll go back in at the end and try to read. And it's like, it's too late to read, because if you skimmed, you would at least had a good idea of what the paper was talking about. So we won't do that again. We will not read, especially when we have these tips and strategies.